You've got to find out what kind of style you are. Be aware of what happens to your style on your good days and your bad days. And be really cognizant of the ditches on the side of the road of both of those styles and find a way forward that is healthy and beneficial to your team.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. And today, Lynley and I are going to have a look at making decisions. Over the course of our leadership journey, we've had opportunity that we've had to be quite decisive in our decision making, and other times where we've been more collaborative and forming consensus or even unanimous opinions with our team. And there's pros and cons for both, and ditches on the side of the road, and we want to sort of have a deep dive into what that looks like. Lynley and I naturally probably gravitate towards different styles of leadership, and so we're going to explore that today and see what happens. So, Lynley.
It's certainly been a journey leading alongside each other with our different leadership styles.
It has been, and one that's actually really exciting, because there have been times where your more prophetic, apostolic kind of nature has led to the requirement of making decisions quickly. And I remember, particularly around COVID times, you acted with decisiveness and with speed, and almost like that crisis required that level of action. The team didn't know what we were doing until it was already happening. If we hadn't done that, we would have fallen over and missed our window. I guess the crisis required that we had hours to act, not, days to gather team, opinion as we went through. So, in that moment, you certainly saved the day with, your kind of, we're doing it.
Yeah, I think it's the skill of any leader to develop the difference, or knowing the difference between when you charge ahead and make executive decisions and even spend budget, and when to slow the process down and bring in team opinion. I think we did at that point, we did get one of our young guys who was a specialist in the area of tech and what to buy and what we needed. And so we did consult with one team member that could run at the speed that we were running at that moment. It certainly wasn't a wider team decision, and we didn't get any input from the greater team. And I think that in a crisis, every leader needs to have the courage to lead with more an autocratic style in order to deliver what needs to be delivered in a crisis. That's not a helpful way to lead all the time.
There's downsides to that more autocratic style of leadership, particularly in the area of team buy-in. And if you're leading a team and then you're just making decisions without consulting the team, then, the team can feel disempowered. And then when the time comes when the leader wants team input, the team can sit in a perspective of, well, you haven't given me opportunities before, you don't listen to me. They feel very disempowered. They don't then engage with the decision and the conversation. And then the leader ends up going, well, you guys aren't contributing anyway, so I'm just going to carry on. And so you end up with a perpetuation of that more autocratic leadership style in an extreme case. So I think there's, we've got to be aware of those pitfalls. It'd be good to kind of explore some of the reasons why leaders might do that or adopt a more autocratic leadership style as a normal mode of operation, as opposed to when the situation warrants it, in a crisis, for example.
Yeah, well, I think that me bending more to autocratic with an apostolic mindset, prophetic mindset, you can see what needs to be done. You can perceive it, but you also have the ability to do it, which is the apostolic and prophetic gift mix. You can really easily see the team who are in dissent or in an opposing view. You can see them as a roadblock to what you believe or perceive is the right way forward. And so if you are that type of style, then the ditch on the side of the road is that you don't see the value that your team can bring. And so you don't actually draw out the best in them. You don't draw out their expertise in order to even better what your idea is. But I do see at times, if your team are not values aligned, if you don't have a values alignment, in your team, or you've chosen people who are not values aligned, then you have a systemic issue in your organization, because there's dissension at a heart and mind level before you even have to make a decision about anything. That values misalignment can be very frustrating, because you feel like someone is always a squeaky wheel, always pulling against the stream and the flow.
Yeah. And I think that what you hit on there, Lynley, is a really, really important point. And I think that having your team actually aligned on vision, mission, and values is vitally important to a team running cohesively and well. And, I want to just make sure when we say vision, mission, values aligned, we're not saying fill your team with people who just say yes. We're saying that people have buy-in to the vision for what the organization is. They understand the strategy, the values that the organization holds. There's alignment there, so that you don't have to relitigate all of those issues at the front end of any kind of major decision. And, because we have experienced where there hasn't been that kind of alignment, and it gets wearying as a leader. And because you get, emotionally tired with team members who aren't vision, mission, values aligned, you start to gravitate more towards an autocratic leadership style, because the energy required to bring people to a place of consensus is too high. And especially with, if you've got to bring them through the vision, mission, values hoop first, before you even get to the conversation about that you're actually trying to have, people who are forming teams need to ensure that there is that alignment at the front end, so that the conversations can be really, really productive.
I 100% agree. I'm just thinking of, our 30 years of leadership and the teams that we've had a general agreement and alignment around philosophy even.
Yes.
And so you don't have to explain why all the time. So when these big situations come up, or a decision needs to be made on direction, you don't have to go, and the reason why we're doing this is, remember, we are a dwelling place of God's presence here in the city, and you don't have to go through all those loops again to try and convince. It's a given that they already think that way.
Yeah, and you already have that sense of, buy-in at that high level. And so the conversation can actually center around the issue at hand, not the organizational purpose. Healthy challenge is really good, bringing people's perspectives where, in the multitude of counselors, there's wisdom, the Bible says, so you actually want people on your team that carry the courage to speak, but also bring their anointing, their experience, their training, everything that they have to offer to the table to make the collective decision better. But you're not having those challenges at the, why the organization exists level, or the direction the organization is going in. You're having those conversations purely about the issue at hand. When we have had that, it's been such a refreshing team.
It's been a joy
to lead. It's been fun. What's been draining has been those where we have had those misalignments. That place of tiredness, whether you're emotionally tired, you're physically tired, you're wearied by the team, that can all begin to push you towards that more kind of command and control, autocratic style of leadership, which, I would argue in the long term is unhelpful for your team.
You're not being your best self as a leader if Stuart Allan is moving towards an autocratic style. What it is it's a distress signal.
Yeah.
Right? This is a healthy leadership podcast, so let's talk about what leaders do under pressure when they're in distress. We need to be aware of who we are and what we're doing on our worst day. And how do we react on our worst day?
In the context of this podcast, we do sit, I won't say opposite ends of the continuum, but we're in a different place. We're different, and so that at times has created tension. And my observation for you, and when you gravitate more towards that, is when your level of frustration grows, and so that can be around timing. you're feeling a sense of urgency to make a decision, and often that's come prophetically or even just from a wisdom perspective, we just need to act here. Or, there's been this kind of loop around the round with people and you've sought engagement. Engagement has been slow in coming. And so the level of frustration, arises and that's when you tend to gravitate more towards that, well, we're just making the decision.
I agree. It's 100% my pattern, right? And that frustration does lead me to just get on and do it, and I'll do it myself if I have to, right?
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily healthy. But when I'm under pressure and when I'm squeezed by people's delay, then that's where I go.
So what do you see I do under pressure in my leadership?
Well, I really do believe that you have a longer ear than I do. You are able to sit with people longer and listen to all their different perspectives. And I think that you are comfortable being the last person in the room to speak. And I'm not comfortable with that. So I like to speak up, but you're very comfortable to listen to everybody's perspective. But only if it's helpful, right?
Yeah, and I think that even in that, I still, if it's taking too long, I do get frustrated with that. Or if I'm not getting the kind of feedback that if it's extraneous feedback or we wander off the topic, or, we actually find ourselves having a vision, mission, values conversation, not an actual issues conversation, then I do get frustrated. And even as a consensus leader or more of a consensus style leader, I do find myself gravitating towards a more autocratic. And so I think there's really something in there around the level of effort that a leader needs to expend in terms of gaining team buy-in is something that we all need to really be cognizant of, because getting team buy-in does require effort. And if you're depleted, thinking about it in terms of the healthy leadership context, if you're emotionally depleted, physically depleted, spiritually depleted, then the level of energy that you have as a leader to expend with your team to bring about that place of consensus and buy-in can feel overwhelming. And so you just default to, well, we need to do it.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's a guardrail that would be helpful for leaders to put in place around, if you're making big calls, big decisions, or you're on a kind of, that kind of trajectory, where are you at in your level of, where's your reserves, where's your tank?
Yeah.
It's
a resilience conversation, really. It's if you're having to make a big call, big expenditure, big investment, or, a structural change of some kind, don't make that when you're feeling really tired. Reschedule that meeting or reschedule that decision until you're actually at a point where you can sit and hear and listen and have a long ear with your team and gather expert opinion.
And it's a learning. And actually we're really talking about team leadership, husband and wife in ministry, the dynamics that happen, and we've been doing it for a long, long time. So we have learned a few things, and it's certainly got a whole lot easier when we started appreciating each other's gifting. And I thought the way I did things was the right way all the time. And that was a point of tension. And, dare I say it, you have as well, but we've learned to value that and appreciate that amongst each other. And that's certainly helped. And, I think that you bring, a lot of our decisions, most of our decisions that have been significant have been, from what I call you the catalytic engine of Stuart and Lynley, because, you have the idea, the impetus, and my gifting can help bring shape to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But definitely the energy, I think, that explosive thing that needs to happen to start something definitely resides more in you than in me. And, and that's, you've got to value that, appreciate that, and, harness that. And when we have done that, we've done all kinds of amazing things.
I know. And together we are a really well-balanced team. And I think that it also speaks to the catch the fire value of as leaders, we want to be a catalyst. We want to start, we want to plant, we want to build, establish, and then we're on to raising up somebody else that can do us out of a job.
Yes.
Right? Which brings the multiplication. And I think that's one of the things that you and I highly value. And with that, we have to have the skill of the apostolic, prophetic, starter, builder, establish, and then the wider leadership skills of raising team, building confidence in them, raising healthy sons and daughters that can carry on the legacy of what you've created. If you're an autocratic leader that it's my way and the highway, or the highway the whole time, you never have that ability to raise up confident sons and daughters that are secure in their own decision making.
That's a really, really good point. If we want to empower our teams and actually have them grow in maturity and confidence, they absolutely need to know how to bring their perspective, their opinion, to the table and be confident in their decision making, and particularly in the way you model it, right? If you're constantly in a place of, well, my senior leader said, then their buy-in is low and they're actually moving forward out of obligation more than actually a sense of, partnership. What's the difference between someone who actually has a very valid concern and opinion about a particular issue that we would do well as leaders to listen to, yet at the same time perceive that person as a roadblock? We have led a team in the past where we've had somebody who has been brought in, we've perceived that being brought in, but there have been times where we consider them to be a roadblock. And it's not about what they say, it's more about how they say it.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And if you're listening to this podcast, go back and listen to one called The Call to Discernment. Because in The Call to Discernment, we talk about, and I think it's pertinent for your question, what is happening in that team? Is it a human spirit that's in play?
Yes.
Is it someone's agenda, right? Or a unmet need in that person? I'm the one who plays the role of being the opposite voice. Have they taken on an identity in the team?
Yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, that's my role in this team, is to play the devil's advocate. Really? What on earth is that's not a life-giving role for anybody, is it?
I fundamentally disagree with that, people taking on that persona in the context of trying to bring the counterfactual argument. It's actually, no, bring your opinion and your thoughts, but don't do that. Don't play the devil's advocate. I don't even like the term.
No, well, the term is terrible, really, but for lack of any other term that comes to mind right now, we all know what we're talking about, don't we? It's that person that, just for the sake of it, wants to be a fly in the ointment.
Yeah, and I think, as I'm just thinking about it now, the times that we've experienced that has been really where the decision on the table actually affects them. They've got a personal level of attachment to the outcome.
Yeah.
And as a team member, they're not able to take on board the more holistic or overview of the team outcome, but they're anchored in what does this mean for me? And where we've had that sense of, they perceive disadvantage to them personally if this decision moves forward. And so they become a roadblock to the decision.
Right.
Being able to discern what's happening in those moments as a leader, I think, is really, really important. And, so listening to that discernment podcast and, really realizing that, leaders, you need to learn to discern. I remember that phrase, when you ask questions about what's this and what's that, and the answer being, well, you need to learn to discern, is never more true.
It's never more true when you're leading a team. Yeah. And the ideal team in an ideal world is that everybody in a team values every other member of the team. Everybody in the team loves everybody on the team. And there's chemistry in the team with one another. There's this positive chemistry where people vibe with one another. That's the ideal. Is it the reality most of the time? Well, if you have a dream team like that, we've had dream teams where everybody's in that place of positivity towards one another and towards the direction of the organisation. But if you don't have that, which is more often than not, where you don't have 100% chemistry through the team, everybody's aligned. These are the challenges for leaders to get skilled in navigating these kind of roadblocks,
Yeah, and I think that's where, I think we've said it before, courage is the most important leadership skill and value that I think you need, because if you encounter, or if you inherit a team, if you grow a team from scratch, you've got your greatest opportunity to bring people onto the team where going in that you've got a vision, values, alignment. If you inherit a team, then the likelihood that there isn't, vision and values alignment there, and particularly if you're now going to execute a different strategy than what you had, then you can have all kinds of trouble, right? But as a leader, having the courage to reshape your team to serve the revision of the vision, is vitally important. Like all these things, it comes back to your courage as a leader. And I would argue that if you don't have vision, values, alignment in your team, then that's your responsibility as a leader to bring it.
Yeah.
And if you can't achieve that, then you've probably got the wrong people on the team. And just to reiterate, we aren't saying you should fill the team with people who just say yes to you, because you actually don't want that. That's actually unhelpful for you as a leader. But you want people on your team that you can actually, 100% for the vision that you're all trying to achieve together.
So good, so good. So in landing this conversation, then we've got, two ends of the spectrum. We've got a consensus style leadership or a unanimous style leadership, wanting consensus. And then you've got the autocratic. Whereabouts do you sit really at the end of this conversation on what is the most effective style of leadership?
We get the best out of our leaders and our teams with a consensus style leadership. That if the leader's getting frustrated, then they do need to take more time to bring the team buy-in. It doesn't have to take weeks, or it can take one personal conversation. I don't think that autocratic leadership, except in the time of crisis, actually achieves the best outcomes for the team and for the organisation. So I sit pretty hard at the end of the consensus style leadership continuum. I don't believe in unanimous support, but I do value the wisdom that other people bring to the conversation, recognising that, the more autocratic style leader often as a person who is bringing more, catalytic energy, is definitely the person you want in a crisis to actually just make the call. And so I think there's a place in there for, which I think you and I have found, around what, how can we leverage the strengths of each other to the best advantage of what we're doing. And, we've pushed and pulled at times with each other over decisions, but because we're so aligned from a vision, values, mission perspective, that works. So, I don't think it's right that leaders camp out in a particular place and say that I'm a this or I'm a that. I would think the days of command and control autocratic leaders as a general style of leadership, those days are over.
You've got to find out what kind of style you are. Be aware of what happens to your style on your good days and your bad days. And be really cognizant of the ditches on the side of the road of both of those styles, and find a way forward that is healthy and beneficial to your team and but also to your own well-being.
That's the point, and I think it's fascinating, this conversation.
I think this is 2 podcasts in one because we just
It
keep
does-
coming out
it does
with
feel
something
like
else that
that.
we want to talk about.
Yeah, but it just we started out with decision making, and it's kind of bled into team dynamics and team makeups, and I think it's good.
This is real life leadership. This is not theory.
The push and pull.
The push and pull, dealing with team members that frustrate you.
So I hope this is helpful, and the people have a bit of a laugh at us, but also there's some pills in there. I know we've dropped some good stuff into this podcast, and so bless you guys, and we'll see you again soon.